Hello and welcome to our data overview for Hamilton Elementary. This presentation is intended for all faculty and staff. The purpose of this data overview is to analyze the most current data for our school to see what our student performance is like and what the learning outcomes are. We also need to have a comprehensive idea of our school's improvement patterns. In this data overview, we're going to use three levels of analyses: aggregated data analysis, disaggregated, and a strand or domain analysis. And these analyses will help us identify one or two key areas in which academic improvement is most needed. The data sources that we'll be using is the student achievement data based on the California State Standards. The California State Test. And we're going to use the most recent results, and that will be for years 2011 to 2013. And the reason why we're not using 2014 and 2015 is simply because the state did not publish those results. And that's because of the transition to the new assessment. So the only published data that we have so far is 2011 to 2013. And that's what we will be using in this data overview. We're going to focus on grades 3 to 5, and we're going to use data from mathematics and English language arts. Another data source that we'll be using is the demographic data. So we will be looking at subgroups based on race and ethnicity, English learners, students with disabilities, and those who are economically disadvantaged. All this data was retrieved from the California Department of Education Data Quest, and it's readily available for your reference if you would like. So let's look at the aggregated data, and we'll start with English language arts. For grade 3, we will see here the performance of our students versus the state and the district. Our school is represented in green, the district is in red, and the state is in blue. Our students outperformed the district and the state over the course of the 3 years. So we see here 66%, 69%, 65%, and it's much higher than the district and the state for all the 3 years. In 4th grade, they also outperformed the district and the state in English language arts. As you can see here, 77%, 77%, and 80%, which is much higher than the scores of the district and the state. Our 5th grade did a little bit differently. They performed either as well as the district and the state or a little bit better. As you can see in 2011, they scored that we had 61% proficiency, a little bit higher than the district and the state. In 2013, we scored the same as the state and a little bit higher than the district. And only in 2012 is when our students outperformed the district and the state. Now let's look at mathematics. Our 3rd graders, again, significantly outperformed the district and the state, and their scores were even higher than the English language arts. So we see in 2011, 81% achieved proficiency, 86% achieved proficiency in 2012, and 85% in 2013. Our 4th graders also did pretty well. They outperformed the district and the state only in 2011 and 2013, but there was a significant difference here. 89% is our proficiency point versus 70% and 71% in the district and the state. Only in 2012, our 4th graders performed just as well as the district and the state, or almost as well. Our 5th graders outperformed the district and the state in 2011 and 2012 in mathematics. As you can see here, 77% of our students achieved proficiency, 83% here, and in 2013 they performed just as well as the district and a little bit below the state. What are the observations that we can see from this data? From the aggregated data, we can notice a lot of strength. In English language arts, our 3rd graders significantly outperformed the state and the district. Our 4th graders also outperformed the district and the state in ELA with at least 10% higher proficiency, and the lowest point being 77%, which is great. In mathematics also, 3rd graders outperformed the district and the state with at least 80% proficiency, And our fourth graders outperformed the district and the state in year 1 and 3, or 2011 and 2013, and they scored at least 70% proficiency over the course of the 3 years. Even though our fifth graders actually did pretty well overall, we have a concern here that their scores dropped significantly from year 2 to year 3. So we notice in English language arts, the scores dropped from 74% proficiency to 60% proficiency. That's 14 percent points. In mathematics, it dropped from 83 to 62. So there is something going on here, and this is an area where we need to do some more digging and find out what happened. Now let's take a deeper look at our data and use disaggregated data, and we'll start by looking at groups by race and ethnicity. Overall, these are the percentages of students by subgroups over the 3 years in our school. So in Hamilton, in 2011, 558 students were enrolled to our school. 48% of them were Latino, 21% white, 14% African American, and 6% Asian. In 2012, our enrollment increased a little bit to 577, and we see that the percentages of the subgroups were very similar to the previous year. There is very minor change here. In 2013, same thing. Our enrollment increased a little bit, and again, the percentages almost stayed the same. 50% Latino, 21% white, 11% African American, and 8% Asian. The most obvious thing that we can observe here is that the vast majority of our students are Latino, and then we have smaller groups of white, African American, and Latino. Now keep in mind that because we have very small percentage of African American and Asian students, we will not have data for them, and we will not be able to compare their performance to the other groups, because the state does not publish data for subgroups if they represent less than 10% in the grade level. This is a summary of 2013 data disaggregated by race and ethnicity. As you can see here, again, the vast majority are Latino. Now let's look at the performance of students in different subgroups. We'll start by third graders in English language arts. You will see here right away that the blue is representing the white population, green is representing the Latino population, the red is representing the African American population, and the reason why you're not seeing red in 2011 and 2013 is because we only had 10 students in that grade level for that year, which was less than 10% of the students tested for all the grade level. That's why we don't have data for them. But what you will notice is that the blue line is all consistently higher than the green line, which shows that there is an achievement gap between the white population and the green population. However, you also need to keep in mind the number of students. You will notice here that we have a lot more Latino students than we have white students. So even though the percentage is lower, it's a percentage, the percentage of a higher population. This is a line graph that shows us the gap. So we see the gap here in 2011. The gap grows wider in 2012 and almost stays the same in 2013. Now let's look at our fourth graders. Again, the blue column is higher than the green column. Only in 2012, the achievement gap was almost closed. So we see again a gap here in English language arts in fourth grade as well. Here's the gap in 2011 and in 2013. And we see that the gap was closed in 2012. We look at fifth grade and we see the same pattern. The blue is higher than the green. The white population, the percentage of white students achieving proficiency is higher than the Latino students. And it's consistent over the 3 years. Again, you see the gap here and the gap here. Now let's look at mathematics. In third grade, the gap still exists. There is an achievement gap between the white students and the Latino students across the board. No difference here. And here's the gap. You see very clearly between the blue and the green line. If you look at fourth grade, however, there is a little bit of a change here. In 2011, the gap was almost closed between Latino and white students, only 1% difference. In 2012, the Latino students outperform the white students. You see here 74% proficiency. In 2013, there's still a gap between the white students and then the Latino. But in 2011 and 2012, we see that the achievement gap was closed. Here we go. They are meeting. Here the green line is higher than the blue line to show that the Latino students are outperforming, but we go back to the gap in 2013. If we look at our fifth graders, we see a similar pattern to the fourth graders. The Latinos, well, in 2011, we didn't have enough white students, so we don't have data for them. But in 2012, you will see that the Latino students again are outperforming the white students, and the same for 2013. So the achievement gap was closed for fifth graders as well in 2012 and 2013. Now let's talk about the observations we noticed from the disaggregated data. Some of the strengths that are very obvious is that fourth and fifth grade Latino students performed as well or better than the white students in mathematics over the last 3 years. So that's great. Fourth and fifth grade Latino students are doing great in math. However, we have some concerns here. In ELA, there's an achievement gap in between the white and Latino students in all the grade levels for the past 3 years. So there is a concern here. In mathematics, there's also an achievement gap between the white and Latino students in third grade. So we have ELA across the board, we have an achievement gap, and in third grade we have one in mathematics. Besides race and ethnicity, we have other subgroups. So let's look at the population in our school. In 2011, we had 49% students who are economically disadvantaged. We had 15% that were English learners, and we had 5% students with disabilities. 2012, we have 51% economically disadvantaged, 13% English learners, and 6% students with disabilities. And you see that the percentages did not change much in 2013. So it's very obvious that the majority of our students, or a high percentage of our students, are economically disadvantaged. Even though we have some English learners and students with disabilities, the percentage is not high enough for us to analyze. So we're actually going to focus on looking at the performance of economically disadvantaged students versus those who are not economically disadvantaged. One more time, this is the summary of 2013. We see a lot of students economically disadvantaged, and only 29% of our students do not belong to any subgroup. Let's look at the performance of our students in English language arts. The red line here shows us the performance of the students who are not economically disadvantaged versus the blue showing us the performance of those who are economically disadvantaged. So it's very obvious there is an achievement gap here. Our students who are from economically disadvantaged backgrounds are not performing well enough. In fourth grade here, we see a gap in 2011 and 2013, but the gap was closed in 2012. So there is hope. Our students who are economically challenged can be achieving just as well as the rest of our students. Again here, our students who are not economically disadvantaged are way outperforming those who are economically disadvantaged in fifth grade ELA. Let's look at mathematics. Again, there is a gap between our students who are economically disadvantaged and those who are not. You see here across the board